The string lights twinkled like stars across the backyard of our rental house in Austin, Texas, casting a warm glow over the carefully arranged tables. I stood on the back porch, surveying the scene I'd spent weeks planning, and felt a mix of pride and nervous energy coursing through me. Everything looked perfect. The mason jar centerpieces filled with wildflowers, the rustic wooden signs I'd hand-painted, the dessert table laden with cupcakes from Sarah's favorite bakery downtown. "Babe, this looks incredible," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I leaned back into his chest, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. At 28, Marcus had this calm, steady energy that balanced out my tendency to overthink everything. "I can't believe you pulled all this together in 3 weeks." I smiled, but my eyes kept scanning the empty driveway visible through the side gate. "I just want everything to be perfect. Our friends have been so excited about celebrating with us, and I want them to see how serious we are about this." Marcus turned me around to face him, his dark brown eyes searching mine. "Hey, they already know how serious we are. We've been together for 4 years, living together for 2. This party isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about celebrating the fact that we're taking the next step." He was right, of course. Marcus proposed 3 weeks ago during a hike at Zilker Park, right as the sun was setting over Lady Bird Lake. It was simple, romantic, and perfectly us. No flash mob, no elaborate setup, just him getting down on one knee while I was trying to take a selfie with the Austin skyline in the background. I'd said yes before he even finished asking the question. The engagement ring caught the light from the string bulbs overhead, a vintage-style setting with a small but beautiful diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. It wasn't the biggest ring among my friend group, but it meant more to me than any expensive stone could have. It represented 4 years of building something real together, of learning how to be partners in everything from splitting grocery bills to supporting each other through career changes. "You're thinking about them again," Marcus said gently, and I realized I'd been unconsciously touching my phone in my back pocket. "I texted them this morning to confirm the time," I admitted. "Mom said they'd try to make it, but Dad has that conference call with the Singapore office." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, a reaction he tried to hide but couldn't quite manage. "Jess, it's Saturday evening. What kind of conference call happens on Saturday evening?" I knew he was right to be frustrated. This wasn't the first time my parents had chosen work over family events. They'd missed my college graduation for a business trip, skipped my 25th birthday dinner for a client meeting, and somehow always found reasons to be unavailable when things mattered most to me. But they were still my parents, and some stubborn part of me kept hoping that this time would be different. "Maybe the call will end early," I said, more to convince myself than him. The first guest started arriving around 6:30. My college roommate Emma came through the back gate carrying a bottle of champagne and squealing with excitement. She was followed by Marcus's coworkers from the architecture firm, my book club friends, and our neighbors from down the street. Soon the backyard was filled with laughter and conversation, the nervous energy I'd been feeling replaced by genuine joy at seeing all these people who cared about us gathered in one place. "Jessica!" My friend Mel grabbed me in a tight hug, her curly red hair bouncing as she practically vibrated with excitement. "I can't believe you're engaged. Show me the ring again. I need to see it in person." I held out my hand and a small crowd gathered around to admire the vintage setting. The compliments were genuine and enthusiastic, but I found myself glancing toward the gate every few minutes, checking for any sign of my parents' silver BMW. Marcus's family had driven down from Dallas that afternoon. His mom, dad, and younger sister Katie, who was a sophomore at UT. They'd brought homemade tamales and insisted on helping set up chairs, treating the whole event like the family celebration it was supposed to be. His mom, Elena, had even made a playlist of Spanish love songs that was now providing the perfect background ambiance. "Mija," Elena said, appearing at my elbow with a plate of food, "you need to eat something. You've been running around all evening taking care of everyone else." I accepted the plate gratefully. Elena had this maternal warmth that I'd been craving my whole life. She remembered my favorite foods, asked about my work projects, and had started including me in family group texts almost immediately after Marcus and I got serious. It was the kind of natural family inclusion I'd always imagined but never quite experienced. "Thank you, Elena. Everything looks so beautiful. You and Carlos went above and beyond with the decorations." "Nonsense," she waved me off. "This is what family does. We celebrate the good times together." Family. The word hit me with unexpected force as I looked around at the gathering. Marcus's family seamlessly mingling with our friends, everyone laughing and sharing stories, the kind of easy warmth that I'd always associated with other people's families. And in the middle of it all, 2 conspicuously empty chairs at the head table. My phone buzzed with a text message and my heart jumped. But it wasn't from my parents. It was from my friend Jake, letting me know he was running late because of traffic on I-35. I quickly typed back that we hadn't started the toasts yet, but as I put my phone away, I realized it was already past 7:30. "They're not coming, are they?" Marcus said quietly, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. I took the offered glass and tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm sure they'll be here soon. You know how Dad gets when he's on important calls." But even as I said it, I felt the familiar sting of disappointment settling in my chest. This was my engagement party, the celebration of one of the biggest decisions of my life, and my parents were treating it like an optional social event that ranked somewhere below a business call with people on the other side of the world. By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing, but the empty chairs at our table felt like a spotlight on my parents' absence. I tried to focus on the joy around me. Marcus's college friends sharing embarrassing stories about his attempts at cooking during their sophomore year, my book club friends grilling him about his intentions with good-natured intensity, Elena teaching a group of my coworkers how to salsa dance on the makeshift dance floor we'd created near the back fence. "Jess, you have to hear this story about Marcus from freshman year," his roommate Tyler called out, gesturing me over to where a group had gathered around the fire pit we'd borrowed from our neighbors. I joined the circle, grateful for the distraction. Tyler launched into a tale about Marcus trying to impress a girl by claiming he could cook authentic Mexican food, only to nearly burn down their dorm kitchen attempting to make mole from scratch without a recipe. The story was funny, and Marcus's sheepish grin as he endured the gentle ribbing made my heart warm, but I couldn't fully shake the feeling of disappointment that seemed to be growing heavier with each passing minute. And that's how I learned that confidence is no substitute for actual cooking skills. Marcus finished, raising his beer in a mock toast to his younger, more foolish self. "Good thing you found someone who can actually cook," Emma teased, nudging me with her elbow. "Hey, we both learned together," I protested. "Remember the great Thanksgiving disaster of 2021? The group laughed as Marcus picked up the story. "She decided we should deep fry a turkey for the first time in our tiny apartment courtyard, with no experience and a YouTube tutorial as our only guide. The fire department was very understanding," I added, and everyone dissolved into laughter again. These were the moments I'd been looking forward to, sharing our history, our inside jokes, our growth as a couple with the people who mattered most to us. But underneath the laughter, I kept feeling the absence of the 2 people who should have been hearing these stories, should have been getting to know the man I'd chosen to spend my life with. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from Mom. "Honey, Dad's call is running longer than expected. We'll try to stop by later if we can. Congratulations again. Can't wait to celebrate with you soon. XOXO." I stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure I understood correctly. They weren't coming. My parents were not coming to my engagement party. Marcus noticed my expression change. "What is it?" I showed him the text, and I watched his face shift from concern to barely contained anger. He'd been patient with my parents' behavior for 4 years, making excuses when they missed dinner invitations, staying quiet when they forgot important dates, being understanding when they treated our relationship like a casual hobby rather than a serious commitment. "Jess, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It's fine," I said automatically, the response I'd been giving my whole life when my parents let me down. "They're busy. Work is important." "No, it's not fine." His voice was gentle but firm. "This isn't fine, and you don't have to pretend it is." Before I could respond, Katie bounced over to us with her infectious smile. "Hey, lovebirds. Mom wants to know if you're ready for toasts." She made me promise to get everyone's attention at exactly 8:15 because she has something special planned. I glanced at the empty chairs again, then at Marcus's expectant family, then at all our friends who had rearranged their Saturday evening plans to celebrate with us. The disappointment was threatening to overwhelm me, but I forced a smile. "Of course. Let's do the toasts." Marcus squeezed my hand as we made our way to the front of the gathering. Elena had somehow organized everyone into a semicircle around our table, and Carlos was tapping his fork against his beer bottle to get everyone's attention. "Friends, family," Carlos began in his warm baritone voice. "Elena and I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Jessica and Marcus. When Marcus first brought Jessica home to meet us 3 years ago, we knew immediately that she was special. Not just because she laughed at my terrible dad jokes, but because we could see how she brought out the best in our son. The crowd murmured appreciative agreement, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. This was what family support looked like. Showing up, speaking from the heart, making the people you love feel valued and celebrated. "Jessica," Elena took over, looking directly at me with the kind of motherly warmth I'd always craved. "You've become the daughter we never had but always hoped for. Watching you and Marcus build your life together has been one of our greatest joys." I glanced at the empty chairs where my parents should have been sitting, should have been hearing these beautiful words about their daughter's chosen family. The contrast was painful and impossible to ignore. Elena continued, We know your parents couldn't be here tonight, but we want you to know that our family is your family. Today, tomorrow, and always. The gathered friends and family raised their glasses, and I heard a chorus of cheers and to Jessica and Marcus. But Elena's words about my parents' absence hung in the air, making their choice not to be here feel even more significant. As everyone clinked glasses and took sips of their drinks, I noticed a small wrapped package sitting on the gift table that I didn't remember seeing earlier. The silver wrapping paper caught the light from the string bulbs, and there was something about it that made my stomach clench with recognition. "What's that?" I asked Marcus, nodding toward the package. He followed my gaze and frowned. "I don't know. It wasn't there when we set up the table." Emma overheard us. "Oh, that was delivered about an hour ago. Some delivery guy dropped it off and said it was from your parents." I put it on the gift table with the other presents. My parents had sent a gift. They couldn't be bothered to show up to their only daughter's engagement party, but they'd arranged for a gift to be delivered. The casual thoughtlessness of it, the idea that a wrapped present could somehow substitute for their presence, made something inside me snap. "Excuse me for a minute," I said, my voice sounding strange and tight even to my own ears. I walked over to the gift table, very aware that several people were watching me with concern. The package was small, professionally wrapped with a generic silver bow. There was a card attached with my name written in my mother's careful handwriting. I picked up the package, feeling its weight in my hands. Whatever was inside, it had cost them nothing. Not time, not inconvenience, not the sacrifice of a Saturday evening business call. It was probably something expensive and impersonal, chosen by my mother during a lunch break and shipped with next-day delivery. The realization hit me with crystal clarity. This gift, whatever it was, represented everything wrong with my relationship with my parents. They thought they could buy their way out of emotional availability. They thought a present could replace presents. "Jess?" Marcus appeared at my side, his voice careful and concerned. "You don't have to open it now if you don't want to." I looked up at him, then at all our friends and family members who had gathered to celebrate with us, who had prioritized our happiness over their other Saturday night plans. These people understood what it meant to show up for someone you love. "Actually," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice, "I think I do want to open it. Right now, in front of everyone." The energy in the backyard shifted as I walked back to the center of our gathering, still holding the silver package. Conversations gradually died down as people noticed my expression, the tension in my shoulders, the way Marcus was hovering protectively nearby. "Everyone!" I called out, surprised by how clear and strong my voice sounded. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It means more to Marcus and me than you'll ever know." I held up the package, feeling its modest weight in my hands. As some of you noticed, my parents weren't able to make it tonight. Work commitments, you know how it is. I couldn't quite keep the bitter edge out of my voice. But they did send a gift, and I thought I'd open it now, with all of you here since you're the family that chose to show up for us. I caught Elena's eye across the circle, and she gave me an encouraging nod. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his supportive presence without him interfering with whatever I needed to do. My fingers found the edge of the wrapping paper, and I carefully peeled back the tape. The silver paper fell away to reveal a small white jewelry box, the kind you get from expensive department stores. My heart sank a little further. Of course it was jewelry. Something expensive and impersonal that my mother had probably ordered online without a second thought. I opened the hinged box, and inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small heart pendant. It was pretty, probably cost a few $100s, and was exactly the kind of safe, generic gift my parents always chose when they wanted to show they cared, without actually investing any emotional energy. But it was the card that made my breath catch. I pulled out the small white card that had been tucked under the necklace's velvet cushion. It was one of those pre-printed cards that come with jewelry purchases, with a generic message about celebrating special moments. But in the bottom corner, in my mother's handwriting, were just 4 words. "Sorry we missed it. Sorry we missed it." Not, "Sorry we couldn't be there." Not, "We wish we could have celebrated with you." Just, "Sorry we missed it." Like my engagement party was a movie showing or a restaurant special. Something unfortunate to miss, but not particularly important. I stared at those 4 words for a long moment, feeling something shift inside my chest. All the years of disappointment, all the excuses I'd made for them, all the times I'd told myself that their absence didn't really matter, it all crystallized in that moment into a kind of clarity I'd never experienced before. "What does it say?" Emma asked gently. I looked up at the circle of faces surrounding me, friends who had driven across town on a Saturday night, Marcus's family who had driven 3 hours from Dallas, neighbors who barely knew us but wanted to celebrate anyway. All these people who understood that showing up mattered. That presence was the most important gift you could give someone you claimed to love. It says, "Sorry we missed it," I read aloud. The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. I could see people exchanging glances, unsure how to respond to the casual cruelty of those words. You know what? I said, my voice getting stronger. They didn't miss it. Missing something implies that you tried to be there but couldn't make it work. Missing something means you're disappointed about the absence. My parents didn't miss my engagement party. They chose not to come. I held up the necklace, letting it catch the light from the string bulbs. This is beautiful, and I'm sure it was expensive. But do you know what it really is? It's a receipt. It's proof of payment for the guilt they should feel about not being here tonight. Marcus moved closer, and I could see the mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. Jess? No, let me finish, I said, surprised by my own boldness. I've spent my entire adult life making excuses for them. Work is demanding. Business travel is unpredictable. Important clients can't wait. But you know what? Everyone here tonight has jobs. Everyone here has responsibilities. Everyone here has things they could have been doing instead of celebrating with us. I gestured around the circle. Emma drove here straight from a double shift at the hospital. Tyler flew in from Denver this morning and flies back tomorrow. Elena and Carlos rearranged their weekend plans and drove 3 hours in Saturday traffic. Because that's what people do when someone they love is celebrating something important. The necklace felt heavier in my hand as I continued. My parents have missed every major milestone of my adult life. College graduation, my promotion to senior designer, my 28th birthday, and now this. And every time they send something expensive and beautiful and completely meaningless as a substitute for their presence. I looked directly at Elena, whose eyes were bright with unshed tears. Elena, when you said my parents couldn't be here tonight, and then you said your family was my family, do you know what that meant to me? Elena stepped forward and took my free hand. Mija, family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. Exactly, I said, my voice breaking slightly. It's about showing up. I turned to face the entire gathering. I want all of you to know that this necklace, beautiful as it is the last gift I'll accept in place of my parents' presence. I'm done pretending that expensive apology gifts make up for emotional absence. I'm done making excuses for people who consistently choose everything else over their own daughter. The silence stretched for a moment, and then Katie started clapping. The applause spread around the circle, gaining strength and enthusiasm, until everyone was cheering and whistling their support. So, I said, wiping away tears I didn't realize had been falling, I'm going to put this away, and we're going to get back to celebrating with the people who chose to be here. The people who understand that love is a verb, not just a feeling. I closed the jewelry box with a decisive snap and handed it to Marcus. Hold on to this for me. I'll deal with it later. He took the box and pulled me into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, he whispered in my ear. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. As we broke apart, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The disappointment was still there, but it was overshadowed by something else. Relief. Relief at finally saying out loud what I'd been feeling for years. Relief at stopping the cycle of disappointment and excuses. Relief at choosing the family that had chosen me. The rest of the party felt different, lighter somehow, despite the heavy conversation we'd just shared. It was as if naming the truth about my parents had lifted a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. The conversations flowed more freely. The laughter felt more genuine, and I found myself fully present in a way I hadn't been all evening. Elena appeared at my side as I was helping clean up some empty plates from the dessert table. Mija, can we talk for a minute? We walked over to a quieter corner of the yard, near Mom's prized rose bush that was still blooming despite the October chill. I want you to know, Elena began, that what you did tonight took tremendous courage. Standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, that's not easy, especially with family. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I don't know why it took me so long. I guess I kept hoping they'd change, that somehow they'd realize what they were missing. Hope isn't a weakness, Jessica. Wanting your parents to love you the way you deserve to be loved is natural, but accepting that they may not be capable of that kind of love, that's wisdom. She paused, looking at me with the kind of maternal concern I'd always craved. Marcus told us about some of the things they've missed over the years. The pattern you described tonight, it's not new, is it? I shook my head. It started in high school, really. They missed my art show because Dad had a client dinner. They missed my senior prom send-off because Mom had an early flight the next morning. I told myself it didn't matter, that their career success was more important than school events. And you carried that belief into adulthood. I did. I made it my job to understand, to be accommodating, to never ask for too much. Because if I kept my expectations low enough, maybe I wouldn't be disappointed. Elena reached out and squeezed my hand. But tonight, you decided you deserved better. Tonight, I realized that I have better. Right here. I gestured toward the party, where Marcus was teaching Jake and Josh how to play his guitar, where my friends were sharing stories and inside jokes, where Carlos was showing Emma photos of Marcus as a chubby toddler on his phone. This is what family looks like, I continued. People who prioritize each other, who show up even when it's inconvenient, who celebrate your successes and support you through challenges. I've been so focused on the family I was born into that I almost missed the family I've chosen, and that's chosen me. Elena smiled, and I saw tears in her eyes. You know, when Marcus first told us about you, he said you were the kindest person he'd ever met, but that you didn't seem to believe you deserved kindness in return. I think tonight you started to believe it. She was right. Standing there in that backyard, surrounded by the laughter and warmth of people who had made a choice to be part of my life, I felt something I'd never felt before. Worthy of love that didn't come with conditions or caveats. Marcus appeared at my elbow, guitar still in hand. Ladies, we're about to start the group photo. Jess, you ready? I looked at him, this man who had spent 4 years showing me what consistent love looked like, who had been patient with my family issues without ever making me feel broken or difficult, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Actually, I said, an idea forming, I want to do something first. I walked back to where I'd left the jewelry box on the gift table. The silver wrapping paper was still scattered around it, looking somehow sad and deflated in the warm glow of the string lights. Everyone, I called out, getting the group's attention again. I have one more thing I want to say. The conversations died down and all faces turned toward me. I held up the jewelry box, then looked directly at Marcus. 4 years ago, I met a man who showed me what it means to be truly partnered with someone. Someone who shows up not just for the big moments, but for the everyday ones. Someone who made me believe that I deserve to be loved consistently, not just conveniently. Marcus's eyes lit up with understanding and emotion. And tonight, surrounded by all of you, I realized that I've built something my parents never could. A family based on choice, commitment, and presence. So Marcus, I turned to face him fully. I don't need an expensive necklace to mark this occasion. I need to say yes to you again, in front of the people who actually showed up to celebrate us. I opened the jewelry box and set it aside, then took his hands in mine. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this family we've built together and the one we're joining. And I choose to stop waiting for people who have shown me over and over again that I'm not their priority. Marcus set down his guitar and pulled me into a kiss that made the whole gathering erupt in cheers and applause. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I choose you too, he said quietly, just for me. Every day, for the rest of our lives. As our friends and chosen family gathered around us for what would become my favorite photo from the entire evening, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Part of me wondered if it was my parents, finally checking in, maybe offering some explanation or apology for their absence. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't check. Whatever message was waiting could wait until tomorrow or next week, or whenever I decided I was ready to deal with it. Tonight was about celebrating the love I had, not mourning the love I'd never receive. The camera flashed, capturing a moment of pure joy. Marcus and me in the center, surrounded by Elena and Carlos, my book club friends, his coworkers, our neighbors, and Katie making bunny ears behind Tyler's head. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Later, as we were cleaning up the backyard and packing away the leftover cupcakes, Emma pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said simply. That couldn't have been easy. It was terrifying, I admitted, but also kind of liberating. I feel like I can finally stop holding my breath, waiting for them to become the parents I needed them to be. And now you can focus on the family you actually have. I looked around at the scene, Marcus and his dad taking down the string lights, Elena wrapping up leftovers with the efficiency of someone who had clearly done this many times before, Katie and my friends loading dishes into boxes to take inside for washing. It was the kind of easy, comfortable family activity I'd observed in other people's lives but never quite experienced in my own. Yeah, I said, feeling the truth of it settle in my chest. I can. As we finished cleaning up and said our goodbyes to the guests, I realized that what had started as one of the most disappointing nights of my life had become one of the most important. I'd finally learned the difference between the family you're born into and the family you create, between love that comes with conditions and love that shows up unconditionally. The jewelry box sat forgotten on the kitchen counter as Marcus and I got ready for bed, and I knew that tomorrow I'd probably put it away in a drawer somewhere. Another expensive reminder of my parents' version of love. But tonight, surrounded by the aftermath of a celebration thrown by people who actually cared enough to show up, I felt rich